Back. We're talking about the Iran nuclear deal, and joining us now from Princeton, New Jersey, is Iran's former ambassador to Germany, Hossein Mousavian. And with us here in Washington is the author and former U.S. negotiator with Iran, Mann Leverett. Ambassador, I want to go to you first in Princeton. You've been one of these negotiators. You've looked at this deal. Just tell us what's in it and who's won and who's lost, or is it a compromise?
I believe the deal is not ideal deal for Iran and even not for the U.S. It is a practical, realistic deal. After 23 months of hard negotiations, Iran and the world powers, they understood this is the maximum either side can get. At the end, I believe this is a win-win because both parties have been able to achieve their red lines. For the U.S., the red line was no nuclear bomb, and the deal completely assures Iran's program would remain peaceful forever because Iran has accepted the maximum level of transparency, intrusive inspections at the highest level which the international regulations permits. Also, Iran has accepted many measures assuring no weaponization in Iranian nuclear program, which no other NPT member have ever accepted, like capping the enrichment at 5%. It is a win for the U.S. and for the world powers. It is a win also for Iran because ultimately, after 12 years of negotiation, the world powers now have accepted the rights of Iran for peaceful nuclear technology, including heavy water and enrichment. Also, they have accepted to lift the sanctions. Therefore, I would say this is a realistic deal, a win-win deal for both parties.
Thank you very much. And you're right, under the NPT, people are allowed that. And of course, Iran is a signatory. I just want to bring you in here. We heard just before the break, Mohammed Morandi saying that the Iranians probably wouldn't accept any inspections of their military sites. The language is vague in this 100-page agreement. We do have precedents, for example, with Iraq. What do you think is going to go on here? And could this actually scupper the deal going forward?
Well, I think the language is intentionally vague, in particular because the Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran made that a red line. And here in the United States, here in Washington, President Obama said that there would be anywhere, anytime access, including into sensitive military sites, really putting the United States very far on the other end of the position. What I think will happen going forward is that there will be some finessing of modalities to address this. And I think we could look at, just in terms of Iran and the nuclear issue, a precedent being during the 2003 to 2005 period, the UN, the IAEA was able to gain access to Parchin, which is a military site in Iran. It wasn't an on-demand inspection as it may be portrayed here in the United States in this agreement, but it was a worked out, negotiated access. And I think we'll likely see something to that effect, but it also could become a real stumbling block, or in the end, it just may not be that important because it may be that the parties are able to use this deal as the strategic lever that it should be to open up a whole new chapter in relations, and no one's really going to care at the end of the day what's in this site or that site.
A whole new chapter of relations. Ambassador, sanctions relief, of course, key here. Iran wanted it front-loaded, i.e. all the sanctions pretty much dropped at the beginning. That hasn't quite happened, and they could snap back, according to the text, in the UN Security Council. Is Iran worried about that going forward?
I don't believe there would be snapback because I'm sure Iranians, they would fully complement without any problem. You know, the first agreement came November 2013, Joint Plan of Action, and the second agreement came April 2015. The world powers, they have already seen that Iran has fully implemented both agreements with no problem. Iran has been completely committed to the full implementation of the two agreements. I believe Iran would implement. I'm not worried really about the Iranian side. I'm not worried about the other world powers like Russia, China, Europe. I'm a little bit worried about domestic situation in Washington. I think the big problem and the big worry would be about domestic situation, the opposition from Congress, the pressure from AIPAC, the pressure from Netanyahu. This is something we should be worried about.
Ambassador, I'm glad you said that. I just want to play some video now of John Kerry really reassuring about this deal.
For the next 15 years, no uranium will be enriched beyond 3.67%. To put that in context, this is a level that is appropriate for civilian nuclear power and research, but well below anything that could be used possibly for a weapon.
Hillary, I want to pick up what the U.S. Secretary of State just said there, because he's sort of reassuring the American public and the American political establishment that this is a verifiable deal, that it won't lead to the breakout capability that we've been talking about. How big a selling job do they have to do here in the United States? And does it matter in terms of scuppering this deal?
Well, it's the size of the sale, but it's also the kind of sale. And I think what we're seeing from Secretary Kerry is something I'm disturbed about, is that they may try to sell it as a narrow arms control agreement. Well, there's never going to be an agreement that's going to be good enough to contain what many in Washington see as an unreconstructed evil state, as the Islamic Republic is in many people's eyes here in Washington. I think that's going to fail. And I think the attempt to say, well, the Iranians are going to abide by this, and so we don't have to worry. And in the meantime, we're going to continue to sell tens of billions of dollars of weapons to Saudi Arabia and Israel, could end up
while Iran still has the arms embargo in place.
Exactly, while Iran still has the arms embargo in place, could make it for an even more destabilized region, highly militarized region. So I'm concerned about that. But I think there will be this attempt to appease Congress, because there is a real strategy here by Republicans. They know they can't win, they know they can't block it legally, but what they can do is diminish its legitimacy. Obama's going to be able to override the veto, to sustain his veto, but they can delegitimate it by saying that the majority of the representatives of the American people didn't like it.
So do you think the American administration should go the other way and try and pile on to this deal, this new relationship with Iran that this window of opportunity is given, and what could they do? Well,
that's exactly what they need to do, just like Nixon and Kissinger did with China. They didn't sell it to the American people that China was some, great, fantastic country that we had to embrace because they were just like us. No, we accepted that the People's Republic of China was different, but it was a rising power with which the United States had to have a constructive relationship, and we need to do that with the Islamic Republic of Iran, but Obama has not made that strategic case, and I'm afraid he will not.
And it's not just the US-Iran here, it's a lot of other powers as well. Let's listen to the Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif, because he goes out and thanks Russia and China, and that has strategic implications going forward.
China and Russia were two friends of Iran that have stood with us throughout this process. We're looking forward to cooperating with China in a whole range of areas now unimpeded by sanctions and unaffected by sanctions.
Ambassador Mousavian, what are the strategic implications going forward of this deal that Hillary was mentioning? Obviously, the US-Iranian dynamic can change, but also people who have had problems dealing with Iran because of international sanctions, and we're talking about China and Russia, what does that happen? What can happen now?
First of all, I think the deal is extremely important because it prevented a possible war which could be disaster for the region, for the US, for international community. Second, this is a good deal because it is really a big victory for diplomacy in the region. We have many crises. It is a good evidence that if the world powers are ready to negotiate with Iran based on mutual respect, Iranians would be ready to make diplomacy successful on other issues. However, this is the first success on Iran-US direct negotiations. We have had 35 years of animosity. For the first time, Iranian and American foreign ministers, they sat together for 23 months, and they could resolve peacefully one of the major international crisis, which was Iranian nuclear program. I believe this door would definitely lessen the tension between Iran and the US. This deal would open the door for a regional dialogue between Iran and the US to work on the issues of common interests, like fighting ISIS, Jabhat al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, terrorism, bringing peace, stability in Afghanistan, Iraq, and even resolving the crisis in Syria and Yemen.
Ambassador, thank you. Hillary, last word. Potential here?
There's a huge potential for the United States in the region, but I think for China, especially, this is an important deal. While Iran was under sanctions, Iran could never join, for example, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now it can. China is looking to have what it calls this One Belt, One Road strategy that rejuvenate the Silk Road. Iran is critical for that, and now they can do that unimpeded by U.S. sanctions.